Welcome to the Four Seasons Podcast, brought to you by B&H Wealth Strategies, serving Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia since 1966. Here, we guide you through the ever-changing seasons of your financial journey, offering insights to help you grow, protect, and enjoy your wealth. Ready to turn your financial dreams into reality? Dare to dream. And now, here's your host, President of B&H Wealth Strategies, Jeff Bingham.
From headlines to portfolios, global unrest sends ripples throughout every corner of the market. In this episode, Jeff helps us break down how investors can stay grounded when the world feels really uncertain. Welcome back, everybody. Skip, my co-host / producer, back in the studio with President of B&H Wealth Strategies, Jeff Bingham, here in the Four Seasons Podcast. Jeff, how you been?
I've been great, Skip. How about yourself?
Been doing just fine. I think this question is episode's pretty timely because things are, quite unstable at the moment in the world and a lot of different things going on. So I thought it was timely to ask the question: how does global instability impact investment markets and activity we should be concerned with?
Well, as we kind of talked about that a little off air before we went on, we were talking about there certainly are a lot of a lot of headline news, some noise, but some news as well in that. And yet the U.S. stock market and to some degree global markets as well, continue to climb and set new records, or we're at near record levels in the U.S. right now. And that often, and the government's closed. I mean, a lot of things we can kind of touch upon as we go through this, and as we talk about global instability and what that is. I mean, I think the first thing that I think about is, maybe most or a lot of people think about, is a war, right? Conflict. But conflict is not just guns and bombings and guns and tanks and those kind of things. I mean, it's tariffs, it's government shutdowns. I mean, there's all kinds of things to kind of look at there. And so I'll try to, in our brief time together, kind of touch on those things. But again, the most curious thing is how do markets, that people have and question me about when they look at these things, is that, well, how does a market continue to climb and we continue to see these record, highs, while we've got the Ukrainian-Russian war continuing to go on, kind of a little bit of the tennis match back and forth about, the peace talks on, peace talks off, Putin going to talk to Trump, what about Zelensky, that's just back and forth on that, and interestingly, that war, right, we're, in February, I believe I'm right, there'll be 4 years that war has been going on, so we're, what the better part, but well over 3.5 years, into that conflict. And yet, it really, how much impact has it had on us as we sit here in the United States, not just on our markets, but on our lives, right? I mean, we see a lot of headlines on it. We see a lot of social media commentary on it. There's a lot of there's a lot of fighting between those that want to defend Ukraine, those that want to walk away from war altogether. I mean, there's a lot of different factions, in our country and obviously globally as well that go into that. Yet we've continued to kind of operate without much interruption, at least seemingly. I think there are a lot of things that are in there. And obviously we also have had, the conflict that is, kind of is resolved or resolving or whatever the case is going to be in the Middle East with Gaza. In Israel, we bombed Iran. I mean, there's all kinds of things to talk about in there. The conflict in the Middle East, we can get peace for a while and it'd be nice to see. And I think it's possible for a bit. My opinion, because I do come at things from a more biblical, perspective that we talked about before, that conflict will not end until Jesus comes back. So I haven't really answered the question, how do you navigate that? I think you just have to separate again, it's a separation of the noise out of it, right? Again, because we typically think that wars are bad and it's going to cause markets to do poorly. But But war seems to be something, or conflict seems to be something that's always going on out there. It's really what it does it disrupt from a market perspective? Is it disruptive to economic activity in the United States and then amongst the global trading partners that we operate with? And does it spur some of the economic activity in the United States and throughout the, kind of, let's say, the Western, more developed part of the world? And I think the answer is really more along the latter part of it. And you can have a conversation about the good, the bad, and the indifferent on that right there. But I think it does. It the world kind of keeps on operating around these conflicts. What I think, if you look in Europe, where the Russian Ukrainian conflict has more impact over there now, you can have a much larger impact on the United States, is that the energy that is that Western Europe depends on comes from Russia, right? They've got themselves into that position over there to be relying on that. And that's another, kind of long conversation you could have about that. But that's really one of the most impactful. The most impactful thing is that people are losing their lives over. Let me say that first, right? That there are, 5 to 7,000 people on the Ukrainian and the Russian side every day that are dying, both soldiers and civilians, and that's just a tragedy in itself, and that needs to be stopped from that standpoint. But from an economic standpoint, it is, what does Russia have that Western Europe Western Europe needs, and that's energy, and so there's all kinds of back and forth on that, and that's caused some trouble certainly for the Western Europeans, not just for the cost of energy, but also kind of the, if you will, kind of the what would I say right here? The moral integrity, perhaps, of that we need the energy where we don't want Russia to take over Ukraine, but we need Russian oil, and so we're still buying it, whether we're buying it directly or through backdoor mechanisms to do that. Then you also, think about, kind of the conflict, if you will, that remains front and center. I think more importantly for us in the United States anyway, and I'll say America first, is China. I mean, again, what we're dealing with there, and China is certainly buying oil from Russia. And in that part of it. So again, that's the connective things. You can't say that none of these things are connected, because they all are. So we're in a constant, you know, it's a very strange relationship that we need with the Chinese, again, without going through this. But that's the conflict that we have with them, is probably more front and center to US economic growth, i.e. the stock market, which is what we talk about and what we invest in. And that's through tariffs and the intellectual property, the battle, to AI supremacy, if you will, right? And can the U.S. continue to be the global economic powerhouse and really the only superpower, if you will, in the world? And that's certainly something that we're watching, and we are right now. But I think the Chinese, in my opinion, they've got a long game in mind, and their long game, I think, includes at some point in time, kind of surpassing the U.S. in global supremacy, if you will. And I think we need to be very guarded about that. So I think but the tariff war, if you will, which is conflict, right, between the U.S. and China, that Trump started in 2016, that Biden continued. So this shows you that this really does transcend, not just from you know Republicans and Democrats. This is more of a U.S. battle. You can argue the merits of all these things, which is a different conversation, though, because the Biden administration, the Democrats, when they were in charge, they didn't take the tariffs off of China. So we see the value of that. I think this is something that'll continue to go on, and I think COVID again showed us that we do need to be a little more for those things that are essential for the U.S. And you have a enemy's a strong word, but I don't have a foe, perhaps, right? A challenger for global economic and military supremacy in China. You might not want to rely on them completely for all of our essential needs, from for chips, computer chips, the things that we're driving AI for our medications and the minerals that as we move to a more a greener energy direction with it, that we've talked about doing different conversation altogether, where you're getting these things from China and China can control those things, right? I mean, we have the pocketbook, they have the manufacturing, the many of the materials, that are necessary. So it's a very fine line to go through there, and those are the things that will create havoc in the markets more than guns, and that right now anyway, kind of on the ground military, old fashioned conflict of guns and tanks and airplanes, right? I mean, it's serious, but I think the real war is an economic war that's going on, and I think that economic war is really with China and the U.S. and how that plays out, and that's going to drive the GDP of the United States versus the GDP of China, and also the cost of goods and services that we're going to deal with, and thus drive the price of the stock market, our investments that we've become so sensitive to as a country. And I think what my opinion would be is that, and there's a number of reasons when I'll say this thing, that we have, and I don't necessarily think that it's been on purpose, but as things have evolved, if you really look back to, I think I've talked about this before, you come out of the Clinton administration when we kind of greased the skids for China to enter into the World Trade Organization, at the end of the 1990s, and then they entered in the early 2000s. I mean, we saw immediately upon that happen, as I snapped my fingers there, roughly 6 billion manufacturing jobs left almost immediately right there, because corporate America saw an opportunity to reduce cost. And it's good in the short run. That's a really good thing, right? Reduce cost, manufacturing prices go down, so profits go up at corporations. Okay, that's one thing. Prices go down for American citizens, but we wiped out and continue to wipe out a lot of the working, kind of middle class, which is, I think, the backbone of this country, and that just continued to happen. It just didn't happen all at once at the beginning, although a lot of it did, but it's continued to happen. And so, how do you resurrect, if you will, the working middle class, kind of the middle of this country? And there's a lot of, and can you, right? I mean, with AI and all these things that are going on there, it's not only does it need to be done, yeah, can it be done? Don't know. I mean, right? Because even if we bring a lot of manufacturing back to this country, manufacturing plants are not what they used to be. They're more, there's more automation, and AI is going to continue to change that. Although what I would say in one regard from that is that, boy, there's a lot of building and things that go around that. When these plants come in, you're going to bring in, obviously there's management, but there's worker, there's service, there's things, there's restaurants, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built out of that, and then expands out of those kind of things. So I think sometimes we talk about manufacturing. Well, manufacturing is never going to be the same way it is, and it's not. But when you're building these plants and you have to service these plants, you have to do all these things. The work that to that blue collar middle class, and providing kind of the muscular man a job to kind of does come back a little more. I think I don't think that gets talked about enough in my own humble opinion along those lines. So I don't know that I really answered the question, but I think markets can work really well during global conflicts. Economic conflicts are what are going to cause the markets not to work well, you know. And so stay tuned to China and Taiwan and all the kind of things where we're relying on Taiwan for almost all the semiconductor, manufacturing. We're trying to get some back here, but it takes a long time for that continue to happen. And we offshored that, a long time ago. And we were, in my opinion, really short sighted on that, and have really been slow to respond to get it back here. We'll see if this administration or any administration in the future can do that, and kind of continue to keep it, because again, it's really American security, right? It's really our security and safety that we're talking about here. It's not stock market prices; it's safety and security. So,
Very deep subject, and appreciate you helping us make sense of the chaos. Actually, maybe we can delve back in a future episode because there's a lot to talk about.
yeah, I think I would like to, and probably kind of clear up some of those things, but chaos is always present in the world. Don't make no mistake about it. We think of this as the most chaotic time we've ever seen. Look back at any point in time in history. It's history may not repeat, but it rhymes.
Amen, brother. It does. Well, Jeff, again, your insights are always appreciated, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, Skip. Have a great weekend. As always, enjoyed it very much.
Thanks for tuning into the Four Seasons podcast, brought to you by B&H Wealth Strategies, where your financial success is our priority. Schedule your free 20-minute consultation today by calling 423-247-1152 or by visiting bhretire.com. Take the first step toward making your financial dreams come true. Until next time, remember, every season is the right season to plan for your future. Securities and registered investment advisory services offered through Silver Oak Securities, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. B&H Wealth Strategies and Silver Oak Securities, Inc. are not affiliated.